The stranger rode into Cedar Falls as the sun bled crimson across the sage. His horse favored its left leg, each step measured against pain. Cole Drifter had learned to recognize suffering in all its forms. The boy sat alone by the creek, fishing pole slack in small hands. Fever painted his cheeks the color of autumn leaves. Cole's weathered fingers found the letter in his vest pocket, words from a daughter who believed him dead to her. "Mr. The boy's voice cracked. "You looking for work?" Cole studied the child's hollow eyes. "Might be. My ma needs help. Ranch is dying." Nathan pointed toward distant smoke. "Cattle got the sickness." Sheriff Burrell watched from his porch, hand resting on worn leather. The stranger's shadow stretched long across Main Street, reaching toward the Weaver Ranch sign that swayed in the evening wind. Cole touched his hat brim. "Show me." The boy stood, hope flickering like coal oil lamps in gathering darkness. "Before we continue, please leave a like and let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story." Sarah Weaver stood at the fence line as dawn painted the sky pale yellow, counting the cattle that could still stand. 7 down since yesterday. Her work-worn hands gripped the weathered rail until her knuckles went white. The mortgage payment was due in 3 weeks, and dying cattle couldn't pay debts. "Mrs. Weaver!" Thomas Miller's voice carried across the morning air like an unwelcome crow's call. He sat tall on his thoroughbred mare, his prosperity evident in the silver conchos decorating his saddle. "I've come to make my offer again." "The answer remains no, Mr. Miller." Sarah didn't turn to face him. "Be reasonable. I'll give you enough to start fresh somewhere else, maybe back east with your people." "This is my home." The words came out harder than intended. "My husband is buried on this land." Thomas shifted in his saddle. "Pride makes a cold bedfellow, Sarah, and it won't feed your boy. Good day, Mr. Miller." She listened to his hoarse retreat, then pressed her palms against her eyes. No tears. Not yet. Not ever, where anyone could see. The sound of approaching hooves made her spine straighten. Nathan appeared over the rise, but he wasn't alone. A stranger rode beside him, tall and weathered, moving with the unconscious grace of a man who'd spent his life in the saddle. "Ma, this is Mr. Cole," Nathan called out, hope brightening his fevered face. "He knows about sick cattle." The stranger dismounted, removing his hat to reveal hair gone silver at the temples. His eyes held the peculiar stillness of deep water. "Mrs. Weaver, your son said you might need help." "I can't pay wages," Sarah said bluntly. Better to establish that truth immediately. Cole Drifter walked to the fence, studying the sick cattle with practiced eyes. His hand ran along one heifer's backbone, checking the spine, then examined her gums. "Black leg fever. Seen it in Colorado. Killed half the herds in 78 before we learned to treat it. You can cure them. Can try. Need sulfur, molasses, and linseed oil. Maybe save most of them." He paused, meeting her gaze directly. "I don't need wages. Room and board would suffice." Sarah studied him, the careful way he moved, like a man containing something broken. The worn letter visible in his vest pocket, the gentleness in hands that had clearly known violence. Why would you do that? Man gets tired of riding alone. Simple words, but they carried weight. Nathan looked between them, barely breathing. Sarah saw her son's desperate hope, felt her own pride warring with necessity. "The barn's got a room. Was the foreman's quarters when we could afford one?" She forced the words past the knot in her throat. "Breakfast is at dawn, supper at dusk." They worked through the afternoon heat, Cole showing her how to mix the treatment, how to dose each animal. His knowledge was practical, earned through experience rather than books. Sarah found herself stealing glances the patient way he explained things to Nathan, the respect in how he asked rather than ordered. "Your husband taught you well," Cole said as she handled a restless heifer. "This ranch shows good management." He's been gone 2 winters. Sarah didn't elaborate on the pneumonia that took him, the medical bills that drained their savings, the struggle since. By evening, they'd treated 20 head. Nathan had pushed himself too hard, his fever returning, but his eyes shone as they gathered for supper. Sarah had stretched the stew with extra vegetables from her mason jar reserves, added flour dumplings to make it filling. The kerosene lamp cast warm light across the kitchen table's checked cloth. Cole hesitated at the doorway. "I should eat in the barn." "You'll eat at this table?" Sarah's tone brooked no argument. "We say grace in this house." They sat, Nathan eagerly taking his place, Cole settling uncomfortably in the 4th chair, the one that had sat empty these 2 years. Sarah's breath caught, but she pressed forward with the familiar prayer. "Thank you for this food and these hands that prepared it," she began, then faltered. The formula felt incomplete. "And for sending help when we needed it most." "Amen," Nathan said firmly, already reaching for the cornbread. Cole ate slowly, appreciatively. "Been some time since I had a proper meal at a proper table." "Where's your family?" Nathan asked with a child's directness. "Nathan," Sarah warned. "It's all right." Cole set down his spoon. "Had a daughter once, about your age now, I reckon. Haven't seen her in some time." The admission hung in the air like smoke from the iron stove. Sarah recognized the particular grief of separation, different from death, but perhaps harder to bear. She rose, busying herself with the coffee pot. "Barn's this way," she said after supper, leading Cole across the darkened yard with a lantern. The room was sparse but clean, a rope bed with a corn shuck mattress, a washstand, wooden pegs for clothes. "There's a well pump outside. Outhouse is behind the barn." Cole set down his saddlebags, then noticed something in the corner, a child's carved wooden horse, painted black with real horsehair for mane and tail. Sarah's breath hitched. "That was my husband's. He was carving a whole set for Nathan when he—" She stopped, reached for the toy, then drew back her hand. "Nathan might like to show it to you sometime." Alone in the barn, Cole held the wooden horse up to the lantern light. The craftsmanship spoke of love, of plans interrupted, of a father's hands that would never finish what they'd started. He set it carefully on the windowsill where the boy might see it, then pulled out the letter from his vest, creased from reading, tear-stained from regret. "Papa," it began, "if you're still alive somewhere." Through the barn window, he could see the house's warm lights. Sarah moved past the kitchen window, her silhouette graceful despite exhaustion. The empty chair at the table hadn't escaped his notice, nor the way she'd paused before allowing him to sit there. Tomorrow he'd ride to town for the medicines. Tomorrow he'd try to save what could be saved. But tonight, for the first time in 2 years, Cole Drifter fell asleep to the sound of a family settling into evening routines, Nathan's cough from the loft, Sarah's footsteps on the porch, the creak of her rocking chair, the sounds of a life he'd lost and might, perhaps, touch again. His hands had stopped trembling. The morning air carried a chill that promised autumn as Cole saddled his horse. Nathan waited by the barn, already mounted on the gentle bay mare his father had trained. The boy's fever had broken during the night, but dark circles still shadowed his eyes. "You sure you're up for this ride?" Cole asked, checking the cinch one more time. "Ma says I need to learn the business of ranching," Nathan replied, sitting straighter. "That means going to town when necessary." Cole hid a smile. The boy had his mother's steel beneath the fever-weakened frame. They rode in companionable silence for the first mile, following the wagon road that wound between stands of cottonwood and sage. The mountains stood purple in the distance, snow already dusting their peaks. "Mr. Cole," Nathan's voice broke the quiet. "That scar on your shoulder, the one I saw when you were washing up yesterday. How'd you get it?" Cole's hand moved unconsciously to the old wound beneath his shirt. "Disagreeable horse," he said after a pause. Sometimes they have opinions about being broke to saddle. Nathan studied him sideways. Must have been some horse to leave a mark like that. Looked more like... The boy stopped himself, perhaps remembering his mother's teachings about prying. Worlds full of disagreeable creatures, Cole said quietly. Horses, cattle, men. The trick is knowing which ones can be gentled and which ones are best left alone. They created a rise, and Cedar Falls spread before them, a proper town with 2 streets crossing at right angles, false front buildings trying to look more substantial than their pine board construction. The telegraph office clicked its mysterious language. Smoke rose from the blacksmith's forge. A freight wagon sat outside the general store, its team of oxen patient in their traces. "Doc Turner first," Cole said, guiding them toward a white-painted house with a shingle hanging by the door. "Then supplies." Doc Turner answered on the second knock, his spectacles perched atop a balding head, black medical bag in hand as if he'd been heading out. His eyes widened slightly when he saw Cole, a flicker of recognition quickly suppressed. "Nathan Weaver," the doctor said warmly. "How's that fever?" "Better, sir. Mr. Cole's been helping with the sick cattle. We need medicine for black leg fever." "Cole, is it?" Doc Turner's gaze was steady, carefully neutral. "Don't believe we've been properly introduced. I'm Howard Turner." They shook hands, the doctor's grip firm and brief. If he recognized Cole from somewhere from some time, he kept it to himself. Professional discretion, perhaps, or simple kindness. "Black leg fever's a nasty business," Turner said, leading them into his office. The room smelled of carbolic and herbs, glass bottles lining shelves, a human skeleton standing in the corner like a patient guardian. "Lost a third of Miller's herd to it 3 years back before we knew what we were dealing with. Need sulfur, molasses, and linseed oil," Cole said. "Enough for 30 head, maybe 40 to be safe." Turner moved to his medicine cabinet, pulling down a large jar. "I keep sulfur for various treatments." He began measuring yellow powder onto his brass scales. "The molasses and linseed oil you'll find at Henderson's store. Tell him I sent you, he'll give you a fair price." The door opened behind them, bringing a swirl of lavender scent and feminine rustle. Grace Hartley entered, carrying a covered basket, her morning dress still black 2 years after her husband's passing. She was pretty in that quiet way of women who didn't know they were pretty. Soft brown hair pinned beneath a simple hat. "Oh, pardon me. Howard, I didn't know you had patients." Her voice carried the cultured tones of education. "Not patients. Exactly. Mrs. Weaver's boy and their new hand. They're dealing with sick cattle." Turner continued measuring powder into paper packets. "Grace teaches at the schoolhouse," he explained to Cole, "and brings me lunch when she thinks I'm not eating properly, which according to her is always." Grace smiled, setting the basket on his desk. "Someone has to look after you." She turned to Nathan. "I've missed you in class, young man. When will you be returning?" "Soon as the cattle are well, ma'am." Nathan's cheeks flushed slightly. Like most boys his age, he was half in love with the pretty teacher. "And you must be the gentleman who's helping the Weavers," Grace said to Cole. "The whole town's talking about it. Sarah's had such a difficult time since—" She paused delicately. "Well, it's good she has help." "Just passing through, ma'am," Cole said, touching his hat brim. "Oh, but you must stay for the harvest dance next month," Grace said brightly, though something sad flickered in her eyes. "The whole county attends. It's quite the social event, isn't it?" Howard, Doc Turner's ears reddened slightly. "Indeed, though I'm not much for dancing myself." "Nonsense. You dance quite well when you actually try." Grace's tone was gently teasing. "You should bring Mrs. Weaver and Nathan, Mr. Cole. Sarah hasn't attended since, well, it would do her good." Through the window, Cole noticed Thomas Miller's surrey pulling up outside, the man himself stepping down with his silver-headed cane and affectation. not a necessity. We should be going, Cole said, accepting the packets from Turner. How much do I owe you? $2 for the sulfur. Though if those cattle recover, that's payment enough. The Weaver Ranch going under wouldn't be good for anyone. Turner's eyes moved to the window, watching Miller enter the general store. Despite what some might think. Outside, Nathan said. Ma doesn't like Mr. Miller much. Any particular reason? He wants to buy our ranch. Been offering since Pa died. Ma says he's got plenty of land already. Doesn't need ours too. Nathan paused. But his offers keep getting bigger, and the bills keep coming due. They entered Henderson's general store, the scent of coffee beans and tobacco enveloping them. Penny candy gleamed in glass jars on the counter. Bolts of calico and gingham lined one wall. Miller stood at the counter, purchasing what looked like an entire case of ammunition. Weaver boy, Miller acknowledged with a nod. His eyes moved to Cole, appraising. And you'd be the drifter who's taken up at the widow's place. Just helping with sick cattle, Cole replied evenly. Noble work. Miller's tone suggested otherwise. Though throwing good money after bad cattle seems foolish when a clean sale would solve everyone's problems. Seems to me a woman's got the right to make her own choices about her own land, Cole said mildly. The store went quiet. Henderson stopped grinding coffee. The telegraph operator paused in the doorway. Miller's hand tightened on his cane. Seems to me, Miller said slowly, a man who appears from nowhere ought to mind his own business. Mr. Henderson, Cole said, turning away from Miller as if he hadn't spoken. I need 10 pounds of molasses and 5 gallons of linseed oil. Nathan moved closer to Cole's side, his small hand brushing against Cole's larger one, not quite taking it, but seeking reassurance. Cole let his hand stay steady, available. Henderson hurried to fill the order, clearly relieved to have something to do. That'll be $3.50, all told. Cole paid without haggling, then gathered the supplies. Miller remained at the counter, watching. As they reached the door, the rancher spoke again. Some men bring trouble with them wherever they go. The widow's got enough troubles without adding more. Cole paused, half-turned. Some men make trouble where none exists. Good day, Mr. Miller. And they loaded the supplies onto Nathan's mare, distributing the weight carefully. As they mounted up, Grace Hartley emerged from a shop across the street, calling out. Nathan, I nearly forgot. She hurried over, slightly breathless. When you get home, tell your mother I'll be coming by tomorrow with some preserves, and tell her... Grace paused, glancing at Cole, then back to Nathan. Tell her she's not alone. She has friends who care about her. As they rode out of town, Nathan was quiet for a long while. Finally, he said, Mr. Miller's not a bad man. Exactly. He just wants things his way. Most men do, Cole replied. The measure of a man is what he does when he doesn't get his way. They stopped at a creek to water the horses. Nathan knelt to drink, and when he stood, Cole noticed him swaying slightly. You all right, boy? Just tired. But Nathan's hand, when he reached for his horse's reins, trembled. Here. Cole lifted the boy easily, setting him on his horse. You did good today. Your pa would be proud. Nathan's eyes filled with tears. He quickly blinked away. You think so? I know so. Takes courage to face men like Miller, even just to stand witness. Your mother's raising you right. They reached the ranch as afternoon shadows grew long. Sarah stood in the doorway, worry creasing her brow until she saw them safe. The relief in her eyes made something twist in Cole's chest. Ma, Nathan called. We got everything, and Miss Grace is coming tomorrow with preserves. And she said you're not alone. And Doc Turner was nice. And Mr. Cole stood up to Mr. Miller in the store. And, slow down. Sarah actually laughed as she helped her son dismount. The sound transformed her face, years falling away to reveal the girl she must have been. You can tell me everything over supper. Nathan's small hand found Cole's again, properly this time, fingers interlacing as they watched his mother's joy. The boy squeezed once, a thank you, perhaps, or a promise, or simply a child's trust freely given. Cole squeezed back gently, the weight of that trust both terrible and wonderful. Through the kitchen window, he could see Grace's preserves would join others on the shelf, the community's quiet support made tangible. The empty chair waited at the table, but somehow it seemed less like an absence now and more like a possibility. The cattle lowed in their pens, ready for treatment. Tomorrow's work waited. But for now, Cole let Nathan lead him toward the warm light spilling from the doorway, toward Sarah's laughter, toward something that might, with time and care and courage, become home. The morning sun cast long shadows across the pasture as Cole showed Nathan how to splice the broken barbed wire. 2 weeks had passed since they'd started treating the cattle, and already the ranch felt different, alive again, purposeful. "See how you twist it," Cole demonstrated, his leather work gloves worn smooth from years of use. 3 times around, then back through. Strong enough to hold a bull, but you can still untangle it if need be. Nathan mimicked the motion with smaller hands, tongue poking out in concentration. "Like this. That's it. Now pull it tight." "No, not that tight. You want firmness, not tension. Wire that's too tight will snap in winter when the metal contracts." "How do you know all this stuff?" Nathan asked, working on his second splice. Cole straightened, scanning the horizon out of old habit. "Man pays attention. He learns. The land teaches you if you're willing to listen." Pa used to say something like that. Nathan's voice went quiet. He said the land had moods, like people. "Smart man, your pa." Cole moved to the next break in the fence. "What else did he teach you?" "He was teaching me about horses. Said someday we'd breed the finest horses in the territory. Had it all planned out, which mares, which stallions to bring in." The boy's fingers fumbled with the wire. "But then he got sick." Cole steadied Nathan's hands, guiding them through the motion. "Plans don't always die with the planner. Sometimes they just wait for the right time to bloom again." They worked in companionable rhythm, moving down the fence line. Cole noticed how Nathan had started matching his movements, the way he checked each post for rot, tested the wire tension, kept his tools organized in his belt. "Mr. Cole, those clouds over there, they mean anything." Cole followed the boy's pointing finger to the northwest, where white clouds built like castle towers. "Mares' tails," he said. "See how they fan out at the top, weather coming, but not for a day or two. When those clouds turn dark at the bottom, flatten out like an anvil, that's when you gather the stock." "How'd you learn to read the sky?" "Had a grandfather, half Cherokee. He knew things about weather that no farmer's almanac could teach. Said the sky writes messages for those who know the alphabet." Nathan stood straighter, shading his eyes. "Could you teach me the alphabet?" "Already am, boy." The sound of wagon wheels made them both turn, but it wasn't a wagon, it was Sarah, walking with a basket on her arm, her blue calico dress bright against the brown grass. She moved with purpose, but Cole noticed she'd taken time to pin her hair up proper, had put on her better apron. "Dinner time already?" Nathan called out. "When 2 men work through breakfast and forget the sun's overhead, someone has to remember to feed them," Sarah said, setting the basket on a flat rock. "Wash up at the stream first, both of you." They splashed cold water on faces and hands, Cole watching how Nathan copied his way of shaking his hands dry, slicking back his hair. The boy was starved for a man's example, drinking in every gesture like desert earth takes rain. Sarah had spread a cloth on the ground, laid out corn dodgers still warm from the oven, beans seasoned with salt pork, pickled beets from her root cellar, a jar of cool buttermilk sweated in the shade. "This is too much trouble," Cole said, settling cross-legged on the ground. "Feeding working men is no trouble. It's what needs doing." But Sarah's cheeks pinked slightly as she handed him a plate. They ate quietly at first, the only sounds the distant lowing of cattle and the screech of a hawk overhead. Then Nathan, emboldened by food and comfort, started talking about the morning's work, his words tumbling over each other in enthusiasm. "And Mr. Cole taught me about mare's tails that's clouds, Ma, not actual tails, and how wire shrinks in cold. And there's a whole alphabet in the sky that the Cherokee know. And let the man eat, Nathan," Sarah said gently, but her eyes were soft as she watched her son's animation. "It's fine," Cole said. "Boy's got a good mind for learning." His father was the same, always asking questions, always wanting to know the why of things. Sarah's voice carried warmth rather than sorrow. John had notebooks full of plans for the ranch, breeding charts, pasture rotation schedules, sketches for a new barn. Sounds like he thought long term. He did. Said we were building something to last generations. She paused, looking out across the land. I've tried to hold on to his plans, but some things... Breeding horses takes knowledge I don't have. Cole took a long drink of buttermilk before responding. I raised horses once. Place in Colorado. Before... He stopped, started again. Quarter horses, mostly. Good working stock, but with some Arabian blood for stamina and spirit. Nathan's eyes went wide. Real Arabians, like from the desert. Their grandparents were brought over by a man who'd traveled to Egypt and Syria, paid a fortune for 3 mares and a stallion. I bought one of his colts, started my own line. What happened to them? Nathan asked. Nathan, Sarah warned. Still there, far as I know. Sold the ranch to my foreman when I had to leave. Good man. He's probably got a fine herd by now. Sarah busied herself packing up the dishes. But Cole could see her processing this information, measuring it against what she knew of him, what she suspected. There's a mare in the barn, she said finally. John's pride. Bloodlines going back to horses that carried Spanish conquistadors. He always said she just needed the right stallion. That gray I've been feeding. Pearl. That's her name. John said her colts would be the foundation of something special. She's got good lines. Cole agreed. Strong hindquarters, deep chest, smart eyes, too. That matters more than people think. As Sarah packed the basket, Nathan suddenly burst out. We should do it. Breed horses like Pa wanted. Mr. Cole knows how. And we've got Pearl. And... He stopped abruptly, face flushing. I mean, if you wanted to stay, sir. Mr. Cole? The silence stretched taut as fence wire. Sarah's hand stilled on the basket handle. Cole could feel the weight of the moment, the boy's hope heavy as mountain stone. Takes years to build a horse breeding operation, Cole said carefully. Not something a man does if he's just passing through. Are you? Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. Just passing through. Cole met her eyes, saw the fear there, and the hope, and something else that made his chest tight. Haven't decided yet. Nathan deflated slightly, but Sarah straightened, lifting the basket with determined grace. Well, when you do decide, the offer stands. John's notebooks are in the house. You're welcome to look at them. She walked back toward the house, her back straight, dignity intact. Nathan watched her go, then turned to Cole with eyes too knowing for his years. She doesn't ask for help easy, the boy said. Neither did Pa. Guess that's why they matched so well. They returned to work, but the rhythm had changed. Nathan kept stealing glances at Cole, questions brewing behind his eyes. Finally, as they reached the last section of fence, he asked, Did you have a ranch because you had a family, or a family because you had a ranch? Cole's hands stilled on the wire. Had the family first, ranch came after, because a man wants to build something for his children. What happened to your family? My wife died. Fever took her quick. My daughter. She went to live with her mother's people back east. Thought it was best for her. Cole's voice roughened. Maybe it was. Maybe it wasn't. You could write to her. I do. Letters come back unopened mostly. Nathan absorbed this, then said, Maybe she's scared, like Ma. Scared to hope for something that might not stay. The wisdom of it, from a boy so young, made Cole's throat tight. They finished the fence as afternoon shadows grew long, walking back toward the barn in comfortable silence. As they approached, they heard voices, women's voices, bright with gossip and sympathy. 3 neighbor women had descended on Sarah, bearing fresh bread, preserves, and news from town. Cole recognized Mrs. Henderson from the general store, a thin woman named Mrs. Patterson, and a jovial German woman called Mrs. Mueller. "And there's the mysterious Mr. Cole," Mrs. Henderson said, eyes bright with curiosity. "Sarah's been telling us how you've saved her cattle." "Just did what needed doing, ma'am." "Modest, too," Mrs. Mueller said approvingly. "Good quality in a man." She elbowed Sarah meaningfully. Sarah's face flamed. "Mr. Cole's been very helpful with the ranch work." "I'm sure he has," Mrs. Patterson said with barely concealed interest. "And staying in the barn like a proper gentleman, Sarah tells us. Though winter's coming," Mrs. Mueller added. "Barn gets awful cold. Man could catch his death." "Ladies," Sarah said firmly, "Mr. Cole's arrangements are his own business." The women exchanged knowing looks, but subsided. As they prepared to leave, Mrs. Henderson pressed a loaf of sourdough into Cole's hands. "My husband says any man who stands up to Thomas Miller is worth knowing. You need anything from the store, you just ask." After they left, trailing dust and perfume, Sarah stood on the porch, arms crossed. "I apologize for them. They mean well, but they care about you," Cole said. "That's good. Person needs community." Nathan had disappeared into the barn and now emerged with something in his hands, a battered harmonica. "Found this in the tack room." Was pause. Sarah's breath caught. "I wondered where that had gone." Nathan held it out to Cole. "Do you play?" "Some." Cole took the instrument, turned it over in his hands. The silver was tarnished, but the reeds were sound. He blew a few experimental notes, then launched into a slow, mournful version of Red River Valley. Nathan settled on the porch steps, Sarah beside him, as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. Cole played old songs his grandfather had taught him, trail songs from his cowboy days, a lullaby his wife had sung to their daughter. "Play Sweet Betsy from Pike," Nathan requested. "Pa used to sing that." Cole obliged, and Nathan's young voice joined in, uncertain at first, then stronger. Sarah began humming harmony, her voice sweet and true. The cattle settled for the night, and somewhere in the pasture, a new calf, the first healthy birth since the sickness called for its mother. As darkness fell and stars emerged like scattered seeds, Cole lowered the harmonica. Nathan had dozed off against his mother's shoulder. Sarah's eyes were wet but peaceful. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For giving him this. For giving us this. For making music in this house again." Cole handed the harmonica to Nathan, who stirred just enough to clutch it against his chest. "Boy needs music. House needs music. Ranch that's going to breed fine horses definitely needs music." Sarah's smile was answer enough. As Cole headed to the barn, he heard her humming still, the melody carrying across the cooling earth like a blessing, like a promise, like the first notes of something that might become a symphony. In the barn, he lit his lantern and found John Weaver's notebooks on his cot, placed there by careful hands. The first page, written in precise script, began plans for the future of the Weaver Ranch, a legacy for my son. Cole opened to a blank page near the back and picked up a pencil. After a moment's thought, he wrote, "Addendum teaching Nathan the alphabet of the sky, the language of the land, and the music that makes a house a home." It was a beginning. Cole woke before dawn to the sound of cattle bawling, not their usual morning complaints, but something urgent, unsettled. Through the barn window, the eastern sky blazed red as fresh blood, the kind of sunrise that made old sailors and cowboys alike mutter warnings. He dressed quickly, noting how his breath misted in the unusually cold air. October in this territory could turn treacherous without warning. Outside, the cattle milled restlessly in their pens, pressing together, facing south. Pearl, the gray mare, paced her stall, ears flicking at sounds only she could hear. The house door opened, and Sarah stepped onto the porch, wrapping her shawl tighter. "Something's wrong," she called. "The milk cow won't settle." "Storm coming," Cole said, studying the northern horizon where a gray line smudged the mountains. "Big one, from the look of it." Nathan appeared beside his mother, the farmer's almanac clutched in his hands. "Almanac says fair weather through the week." "Almanac was printed in Philadelphia," Cole replied. "The sky tells a different story." He pointed to where birds flew low and fast, heading south. "See how they move, and your cattle they know. Animals always know first." Sarah descended the steps, worry creasing her brow. "How long?" "Day, maybe 2, but when it hits—" Cole shook his head. "We need to warn folks. Move livestock to shelter. This could be the kind of storm that kills." "I'll ride to town," Sarah said immediately. "No." Cole's tone was firm. "You and Nathan prepare here. Stock firewood. Secure the shutters. Bank the fires. Fill every container with water before the pumps freeze. I'll go to town. Spread the word." Sarah looked ready to argue, then nodded. "The Patterson place is closest. They have new calves. I'll stop there first." Within the hour, Cole was mounted and riding hard. At the Patterson ranch, he found Jim Patterson mending harness in his barn. "Storm coming," Cole said without preamble. "Blizzard. From the signs. Maybe tomorrow night." Patterson squinted at the sky. "Looks clear enough to me." "Your stock restless this morning." The rancher paused, then nodded slowly. "Wife mentioned the chickens wouldn't leave the coop. Trust the animals. Move your cattle to that draw south of your barn. Stack hay there now, while you can." By the time Cole reached Cedar Falls, he'd stopped at 3 more ranches, each time meeting initial skepticism that faded when he pointed out the signs. In town, he headed straight for Sheriff Burrell's office. The sheriff sat with his boots on his desk, coffee steaming beside him. "Cole," he acknowledged, "you look like a man with purpose." "Blizzard coming. Big one. Town needs to prepare." Burrell's feet hit the floor. "You certain?" "Certain as weather ever is. Red sky. Animals spooked. Pressure dropping so fast my old bullet wound aches." The sheriff studied him. "You've been through this before. Colorado, 78. Lost half a town because nobody paid attention to the signs." Burrell stood, reaching for his coat and badge. "What do you need?" "Ring the church bell. Gather folks. We need organized parties to check on outlying families. Move livestock. Stock supplies." "Consider yourself deputized for the duration," Burrell said, pinning a temporary badge on Cole's vest. "That'll give you authority to coordinate." Within an hour, most of the town had gathered at the church. Cole stood at the front, uncomfortable with the attention but driven by urgency. "Listen close, because we don't have time to repeat this," he began. "There's a blizzard coming. The signs are clear for those who know how to read them. We've got maybe 30 hours to prepare." "How can you be sure?" Thomas Miller's voice cut through the murmur of crowd. He stood near the back, immaculate as always. "Mr. Miller, your ranch has the best barometer in the county. What's it reading?" Miller's jaw tightened. 28.9 and falling. "That's a full point drop since yesterday," Doc Turner said. "That's significant." Cole nodded. "We need teams. Group 1 checks on families outside town, the widows Tompkins and Burke, the Gonzalez family, anyone isolated. Group 2 helps move livestock to shelter. Group 3 gathers emergency supplies." "I'll lead the supply gathering," Grace Hartley said, standing. "We'll need food that doesn't require cooking, medical supplies, blankets." I'll take some men to check the outlying families. Henderson volunteered. What about the children? Mrs. Mueller asked. School's canceled, Cole said. Children help their families prepare, then stay inside. Thomas Miller pushed through the crowd. This is ridiculous. We're mobilizing the entire town on the word of a drifter. A drifter who saved the Weaver cattle, Mrs. Henderson shot back, while you were trying to buy up their land. That has nothing to do with Mr. Miller, Cole interrupted quietly. You have, what, 200 head of cattle in your north pasture. 180, Miller corrected stiffly. How many will survive if they're caught in the open when a blizzard hits? Miller's face darkened, but he didn't answer. You have the biggest ranch, the most men, Cole continued. People are going to need help. Question is, are you going to provide it, or explain later why you didn't? The church went silent. Miller's hand tightened on his silver-headed cane, knuckles white. Then, surprising everyone, he removed his hat. What do you need? He asked quietly. Teams of men to help move livestock. Your wagons to transport supplies to families who can't get to town. Your barn space for anyone who needs shelter. Miller was quiet for a long moment, then nodded. My foreman and 6 men will report to you within the hour. My wagons are at your disposal. Thank you, Cole said simply. As the crowd dispersed to their tasks, old Eugene, the prospector, shuffled forward. His clothes were patched and repatched. His beard yellowed with age, but his eyes were sharp. You know about the caves? He asked Cole quietly. What caves? 3 of them, in the hills north of town. Used to shelter there in my mining days. Big enough for cattle, if need be. Stay warm, even in the worst weather. Something about the rock. Show me on a map. Eugene pulled a creased paper from his pocket, sketching quickly. Here, and here. The biggest one's near Weaver's place. Could hold 40 head easy. Cole studied the map, memorizing the landmarks. Why tell me? Because you're the only one who bothered to ask my opinion about anything in 10 years, Eugene said gruffly. And because that Weaver boy brings me biscuits sometimes when he's in town. By afternoon, the town moved with focused efficiency. Cole found himself at the center of it, coordinating teams, solving problems, making decisions. It felt strange, being needed again, being trusted. At the Weaver Ranch, Sarah and Nathan had been busy. Shutters secured, firewood stacked to the roof of the porch, water barrels filled and covered with oilcloth. Grace Hartley had arrived with a wagon of supplies. Cole's got the whole town preparing, Grace told Sarah as they stored sacks of flour and cornmeal. Even Thomas Miller's helping. Thomas, Sarah's surprise was evident, took his hat off and offered his men and wagons. I've never seen him back down from anything before. Sarah looked out the window to where Nathan was helping younger children from neighboring ranches stack kindling. Mr. Cole has a way of making people see what needs seeing. He does, Grace agreed, then added carefully. He's a good man, Sarah. He's a private man with his own troubles. Aren't we all? Grace touched Sarah's hand. John wouldn't want you to close your heart forever. Before Sarah could respond, Cole arrived with a group of men, including 3 of Miller's ranch hands. Mrs. Weaver, Cole said. Eugene told me about a cave system nearby, big enough for your cattle. With your permission, we'll move them there. I'll help, Nathan said, running up. You'll stay with your mother, Cole said firmly. This is man's work, and dangerous. Nathan's face fell, but Sarah put her hand on his shoulder. There's plenty of man's work here. The horses need tending. The barn needs securing. As the men worked to move the cattle, the northern sky darkened ominously. The temperature dropped steadily, and the first snowflakes began to fall fat, lazy flakes that seemed harmless but promised worse to come. Thomas Miller arrived as they were moving the last of the cattle. He sat his horse, watching Cole direct the operation with natural authority. You've done this before, Miller observed. Once or twice. Military man. Once. Miller was quiet, then said, Sarah Weaver's a good woman. Her husband was a good man. They deserve better than... He stopped, started again. I haven't been as neighborly as I might. Man can always change, Cole replied. Can he? Even after making mistakes? Cole met his eyes. Every sunrise is a second chance. Miller, question is what you do with it. As evening fell, snow began in earnest, thick, heavy flakes driven by increasing wind. Cole made final rounds, checking that families were prepared, livestock sheltered, supplies distributed. Sheriff Burrell found him at the church. You did good today, Cole. Town owes you. Town doesn't owe me anything. Just did what needed doing. That's what I mean, Burrell said. Most men would have looked after themselves first. You looked after everyone else. Cole started to respond, but a figure appeared through the snow. Nathan, bundled in his father's old coat, carrying a lantern. Ma says to come home now, the boy said, the word home falling as naturally as the snow. Says the storm's about to turn mean, and you need to be inside with family. Cole looked at the boy, cheeks red with cold, eyes bright with purpose, and felt something shift in his chest. Tell your ma I'm coming. As they walked back through the thickening snow, Nathan slipped his hand into Cole's. Mr. Cole, are we going to be all right? Cole squeezed the small hand gently. We're going to be fine, son. We're prepared. We're together. And we've got good neighbors. That's all anyone needs to weather a storm. Through the swirling white, the Weaver house glowed with warm light. Sarah stood in the doorway, waiting, her silhouette a beacon in the gathering storm. Behind her, the fire crackled, promising warmth, safety, and something that might finally be called home. The blizzard struck with the fury of a wounded beast just after midnight. Wind shrieked around the corners of the house, rattling windows despite the quilts Sarah had nailed over them. Snow drove horizontal, so thick that when Cole peered out the door, he couldn't see the barn 20 feet away. We need rope lines, he told Sarah, who stood holding a lamp. Nathan pressed against her side. Nobody goes outside without following rope. There's coils in the barn, she said. John bought them for... He was always prepared. I'll rig them. Need to check the animals anyway. You can't go out in this, Sarah protested. Listen to that wind. Animals need tending. If the barn door blows open, we'll lose the horses. He wrapped himself in layers, 2 shirts, his coat, then John's old buffalo robe over everything. Sarah handed him a woolen scarf, her fingers brushing his as she wrapped it around his face, leaving only his eyes exposed. Be careful, she whispered. Cole tied one end of rope around his waist, the other to the porch post. The moment he stepped outside, the wind tried to tear him from the earth. Snow filled his eyes, nose, mouth. He couldn't breathe, couldn't see, could only feel along the rope he'd stretched, fighting for each step. The barn was a black shadow that appeared suddenly out of the white. Inside, the animals huddled together, their breath steaming. Pearl whinnied in recognition, and Cole ran his hands along her neck. Speaking soothing words, the wind tore away. He strung rope from barn to house, house to woodpile, woodpile to privy. On his 3rd trip, he heard something else above the storm's howl, a human voice, screaming. Cole followed the sound, letting instinct guide him through the white darkness, near what must be the road. A darker shape materialized, a horse, riderless, reins tangled in brush. Beyond it, an overturned buggy. Help! The voice was weaker now. Please. Cole fought through drifts already waist-deep, found Thomas Miller pinned beneath his overturned carriage. The man's face was blue with cold, ice crystals in his mustache. My horse spooked, Miller gasped. Ran us off the road. Think my leg's broken. Cole didn't waste words. He braced himself against the buggy's frame, lifted with strength born of necessity. Miller screamed as he dragged himself free, his right leg bent at an unnatural angle. Can you hold on to me? Miller nodded, teeth chattering beyond control. Cole hauled him up, Miller's arm over his shoulders, and began the torturous journey back. Twice the wind knocked them down. Miller's weight grew heavier as the man lost consciousness, but Cole pressed on, following the rope he'd strung, until finally, blessedly, the porch light appeared. Sarah flung the door open. My God. Nathan, clear the table. Get blankets. They laid Miller near the fire. Sarah cut away his frozen trouser leg, revealing a clean break below the knee, bone white against purple flesh. I need splints, she said calmly. And bandages. Cole, your hands. He looked down. His gloves had frozen to his skin, and when Sarah carefully peeled them away, his fingers were white as candle wax, without feeling. Frostbite, she said. Nathan, heat water, not hot, just warm. Bring the whale oil from the medicine chest. She worked with practiced efficiency, splinting Miller's leg while Cole gritted his teeth against the agony of returning sensation in his hands. Nathan moved between them, fetching supplies, keeping the fire fed, never complaining despite exhaustion clear on his young face. Why were you out in this? Sarah asked Miller when he regained consciousness. Trying to get home, he mumbled. Was checking on the widow Tompkins. Her roof collapsed, got her to town, then tried to make it back to my ranch. Sarah met Cole's eyes, something shifting in her expression. Thomas Miller, who she'd thought cared only for his own interests, had risked his life for a poor widow. You'll stay here until it passes, she said firmly. I couldn't impose. It's not an imposition. It's what neighbors do. As the night wore on, they huddled around the fire. Sarah worked whale oil into Cole's damaged fingers with infinite gentleness, her touch awakening more than just frozen nerves. Miller dozed fitfully on a pallet near the hearth. Nathan curled in his mother's rocking chair, fighting sleep. Let me, Cole said, lifting the boy. Nathan's arms went around his neck trustingly, and Cole carried him to his small room, tucking him under heavy quilts with heated soapstones at his feet. When he returned, Sarah was still by the fire. Miller sleeping soundly now. She'd let her hair down, and it caught the firelight like copper. Sit, she said softly, patting the floor beside her. Let me see your hands again. He sat, and she took his hands in hers, examining each finger, the intimacy of it, in the fire-warm darkness with the storm raging outside, made his chest tight. The scars, she said quietly, tracing an old mark across his palm. These aren't from ranch work. No. The bullet wound on your shoulder, Nathan was right, wasn't he? It wasn't from a horse. No. She continued working the oil into his skin, waiting. Finally, he spoke. I was a lawman once. Small town in Kansas. Good at it. Maybe too good. His voice was rough. Made enemies. One night, they came to my house. I wasn't there, was testifying at a trial in Wichita, but my wife was Margaret. Sarah's hands stilled but didn't let go. They didn't mean to kill her, meant to scare me off. But she fought them, and... He stopped, started again. I came home to ashes, took my daughter Emily to her grandparents in Boston. She begged me not to leave her, but I couldn't. I was so full of rage. Went after the men who did it. Did you find them? I did. The words were flat. That's where these scars come from. And the shoulder. Got them all. Legal-like. With a badge and warrant. But it didn't bring Margaret back. Didn't make Emily forgive me for choosing vengeance over her. Sarah's fingers traced the worst scar, a ridge across his knuckles. She was a child, scared and grieving. Children don't understand such choices. Been 3 years now. I write her every month. Most letters come back unopened. The few that don't... He pulled a worn envelope from his shirt pocket. This came last week, forwarded by Sheriff Burrell. Sarah read it by firelight. The girlish handwriting was formal, cold, Mr. Drifter, I received your letter. I am well. I attend school and help grandmother with her needlework. Please do not write again until you have something worth saying. Emily. She's protecting herself, Sarah said softly. The same way I did after John died. John died of pneumonia. Sarah added wood to the fire, watching flames consume bark. That's what Doc Turner wrote on the certificate. But really, he died of pride. His fever wasn't that bad at first, but he insisted on working through it, said the ranch couldn't run itself. By the time he let me fetch Doc Turner, his lungs were full of fluid. She wiped her eyes with her apron. Nathan was with him at the end, held his father's hand while John struggled for breath. No child should watch their father drown in his own lungs. Nathan didn't speak for 2 weeks after. Sarah. I was so angry, she continued. At John for leaving us, at God for taking him, at myself for not forcing him to rest. I shut everyone out, determined to prove I didn't need anyone. She looked at Cole directly. Until you came. The wind howled louder, shaking the whole house. Miller stirred but didn't wake. Sarah moved closer to Cole, their shoulders touching. I was frightened when you rode up that first day, she admitted. Not of you, of what you represented. The possibility of feeling again, of needing someone. And now I'm frightened of you leaving. Cole turned his damaged hands palm up, studying them in the firelight. These hands have done terrible things, Sarah, necessary things. Maybe, but terrible all the same. Sarah took his hands again, cradling them gently. These hands saved our cattle, taught my son to be a man, rescued Thomas Miller. These hands have been nothing but gentle since you've been here. The men I killed were the men who murdered your wife. Sarah's voice was firm. John would have done the same. Any man worth knowing would have done the same. From his palate, Miller spoke, surprising them both. She's right. His eyes were open, alert despite the laudanum Sarah had given him. I've been lying here listening, and I owe you an apology. Cole, and you, Sarah. Thomas, you should rest. No, this needs saying. Miller struggled to sit up. I wanted your land. Yes, but not from greed. My wife, before she died, loved the view from your eastern pasture. Said it was where she wanted to be buried. I thought if I owned the land. He trailed off. Foolish. But grief makes fools of us all. Why didn't you just say? Sarah asked. Pride. Miller said simply. That deadly sin that's killed more men than bullets. The storm reached a crescendo, the house shuddering under the assault. Cole rose to check the windows, and Sarah followed. At the kitchen window, where one quilt had come loose, they could see nothing but white fury. It's beautiful, in its way, Sarah said. Terrible and beautiful. Cleansing, Cole agreed. Storms like this wipe everything clean. Give the world a fresh start. Sarah's hand found his, their fingers intertwining naturally. Maybe that's what we all needed, a storm to wash away the past. They stood together, watching the white darkness, while behind them the fire crackled and Miller dozed, and somewhere above, Nathan slept safely. Cole thought about Emily's cold letter, about Margaret's grave in Kansas, about all the miles he'd traveled trying to outrun ghosts. What will you do? Sarah asked. About Emily. Keep writing. Keep hoping. Maybe send her something more than words. He looked around the warm kitchen, at the home Sarah had maintained against all odds. Maybe tell her I've found a place worth staying. Sarah leaned against him, just slightly, but enough. Have you? Outside, the blizzard raged, trying to tear the world apart. But inside, in the circle of firelight, something new was being built from the ruins of old grief. Cole thought about his grandfather's Cherokee wisdom, how storms weren't punishment but purification, not endings but beginnings. Yes, he said simply. I have. They returned to the fire, sitting close, not needing words. Sarah's head found his shoulder. His arm went around her, natural as breathing. Miller watched from his pallet, a small smile on his pain-lined face. About that eastern pasture, he said quietly. Would you consider letting me visit sometimes to tend my wife's grave? I'd pay. Of course. No payment needed, Sarah said. The dead deserve remembering. The storm continued through the night, but its fury seemed less threatening now. Nathan appeared once, trailing blankets, crawling into his mother's lap like he hadn't done in 2 years. Sarah held him close, humming softly, while Cole kept the fire fed. As dawn approached, the wind finally began to ease. The snow still fell, but gently now, exhausted from its rage. Cole's hands, painful but functional, could feel again not just the returning circulation, but something deeper, the warmth of connection, of being needed, of belonging. Thomas Miller slept peacefully, his broken leg elevated, no longer the adversary but simply a neighbor in need. Nathan dozed against his mother, occasionally murmuring in dreams, and Sarah, her fingers still entwined with Cole's, watched the fire with eyes that held no more walls, no more guards, only the quiet courage of a heart learning to trust again. The storm had done its work. The old world lay buried under pristine white, and in the morning, when the sun finally broke through, it would reveal a landscape transformed, cleaner, simpler, ready for whatever came next. The silence woke Cole first, that peculiar stillness that follows a blizzard's rage. Sunlight, brilliant and sharp, pierced through cracks in the quilted windows. He'd dozed in the chair by the dying fire. Sarah and Nathan curled together on the settee, Thomas Miller still on his pallet, leg elevated on grain sacks. Cole rose carefully, muscles protesting the night's vigil. At the door, he had to shoulder it hard against the drift packed against it. When it finally gave way, the world that greeted him bore no resemblance to the one the storm had swallowed. Snow lay 4 feet deep in places, sculpted into fantastic shapes by the wind. Every fence post wore a white cap. Icicles hung from the eaves like nature's chandelier, already beginning to drip in the morning sun. The air was so clear it hurt to breathe, so pure it tasted like spring water. "My lord," Sarah breathed behind him. She'd wrapped herself in her heaviest shawl, Nathan beside her, both staring at the transformed landscape. "It's beautiful, Ma," Nathan whispered. "Like the whole world got made new." Cole strapped on the snowshoes he'd fashioned from bent willow and rawhide skills his Cherokee grandfather had taught him. "I'll check the animals. See what we lost." "I'm coming," Nathan said immediately. "Snow's too deep, son. I can use Pa's snowshoes. They're in the barn loft. I know right where—" Sarah touched Cole's arm. "Let him go. He needs to help." They tunneled through to the barn, where Cole was amazed to find the animals in good condition. The horses nickered greetings, and most importantly, Pearl seemed calm, uninjured. In the caves where they'd sheltered the cattle, Eugene's wisdom proved true. The rock formations had kept the space warm enough that ice hadn't formed in the water troughs. "Mr. Cole, look," Nathan called from the far end of the cave. "Only 2 didn't make it. Old Bessie and that lame calf." 2 losses from 40 head. It was miraculous. Cole had seen entire herds frozen, standing in storms less severe. "Your ma's going to be relieved," Cole said. "Pa always said Bessie was living on borrowed time anyway," Nathan replied, then suddenly pointed. "Someone's coming." A line of figures approached on snowshoes, Sheriff Burrell leading, followed by Doc Turner, Henderson, and several others. They carried shovels, rope, and what looked like medical supplies. "Cole," Burrell called out. "Thank God, we're checking all the ranches. Any losses?" 2 cattle. Miller's here, broken leg, but stable. Why? Miller, Doc Turner pushed forward. He never made it back to town. We feared the worst. Found him pinned under his buggy. Sarah set the leg, but you should examine it. As they made their way to the house, more neighbors arrived. The Pattersons on their draft horses, breaking trail. Mrs. Muller and Mrs. Henderson in a sleigh, bringing food and supplies. Even Grace Hartley appeared, riding behind one of Miller's cowboys. The kitchen became a makeshift gathering place. Sarah had coffee boiling, using the last of their stores, while neighbor women unpacked preserved meats, canned vegetables, and fresh bread they'd somehow baked despite the storm. It's a miracle, Mrs. Patterson kept saying. The whole county. And we've lost only 7 souls total. The Jensen family tried to make it to town, but Cole's warning saved everyone else. Doc Turner examined Miller's leg, pronouncing Sarah's field treatment professional as any I've seen. Miller himself seemed different, the arrogance gone, replaced by something quieter. I need to speak with Cole, Miller said, privately. They stepped onto the porch, where icicles dripped steadily in the warming sun. I owe you my life, Miller began. You owe me nothing. Let me finish. Miller balanced on the crutch Doc had fashioned. I've been a fool, trying to buy what couldn't be purchased, pushing away what should be embraced. This storm, lying there, thinking I'd die. He paused. A man sees things clearly when death's breathing on his neck. Most do. I want to make things right. That horse breeding program John Weaver dreamed about, I want to fund it. Silent partner. You and Sarah run it. I provide the starting capital. Cole studied the man. Why? Because it's what John would have wanted. Because Sarah deserves success, not just survival. And because... Miller's voice dropped. Because I need to do something good with my wealth before I join my wife. That's Sarah's decision. Then help me convince her. She won't take charity, but a business proposition that's different. Inside, the conversation had turned celebratory. Grace and Doc Turner stood close together, her hand on his arm as she announced, Howard has asked me to marry him. I've accepted. The women erupted in delighted exclamations. Nathan whooped. Sarah hugged Grace tightly. When, Mrs. Mueller demanded. Spring, Doc Turner said, his ears red but smile broad. When the flowers bloom again. Sheriff Burrell cleared his throat. Speaking of correspondence, Cole, this came for you yesterday. Special delivery. Couldn't get it to you during the storm. The letter bore Emily's handwriting, but the tone was different from before. Dear Papa, Grandmother says I'm old enough to make my own decisions now. I'm tired of being angry. I'm tired of missing you. Your letters paint pictures of a place that sounds like home. If you truly have found somewhere to stay, as you wrote, then perhaps I could visit, just for the summer, to see your daughter always, Emily. Cole read it twice, then looked up to find everyone watching. Sarah's eyes were bright with unshed tears. She wants to visit, he said roughly. This summer, Nathan burst out. That's wonderful. She can have the little room next to mine, and I can show her the fishing spot and teach her to ride, and... He stopped abruptly, face flushing. I mean, if she stays here, if that's all right. The slip hung in the air, Nathan assuming Cole's daughter would stay at their house, assuming Cole would be there too. Sarah's hand found Cole's. Of course that's all right, she said softly. Thomas Miller cleared his throat. About that business proposition. Mrs. Weaver. Cole can explain the details, but I'd like to invest in your horse breeding program. John's vision deserves to be realized. I couldn't accept. It's not charity, Cole interrupted. It's business. Miller provides capital. We provide expertise and labor. Legal partnership. Written contracts. Shared profits. Sarah looked between them, understanding dawning. You discussed this. We did. She was quiet for a long moment, then said, John would have appreciated the irony. His greatest rival fulfilling his dream. Then you'll consider it. I'll do more than consider it. Sarah stood straighter. But there are conditions. Full transparency in the books. Nathan learns the business alongside the ranching. And Cole has equal say in all decisions. Agreed, Miller said immediately. He extended his hand to Cole. Partners. Cole looked at Sarah, who nodded. Partners. Nathan couldn't contain himself anymore. He burst through the gathered adults, out onto the porch, throwing his arms wide to the sparkling world. Pama, look, everything's perfect. The word Pa rang across the snow-covered ranch, and this time no one corrected him. Cole felt something shift in his chest, a door long barred swinging open. Sarah's hand squeezed his. Out of the mouths of babes, she murmured. As the neighbors prepared to leave, everyone contributing to the clearing of paths and checking of livestock. Sarah disappeared upstairs. Cole could hear her moving about, drawers opening and closing. Grace found him on the porch. She's packing away John's things, she said quietly. She's been unable to until now. His clothes, his personal effects. Not throwing them away, saving them for Nathan when he's grown, but making room. Room for what? Grace smiled. Don't be dense, Cole. You know exactly what. The afternoon sun turned the snow to diamonds. Water dripped steadily from the eaves, a percussion of renewal. The coal stove in the kitchen worked overtime, keeping the house warm as people came and went. Mrs. Muller had somehow produced a cake, declaring they needed to celebrate survival. New partnerships and engagements all at once. Sheriff Burrell pulled Cole aside. That temporary deputy badge, I could make it permanent. Town could use a man with your experience. I'm a rancher now, Cole replied. Or will be, once we get those horses breeding. Rancher and part-time deputy has a nice ring to it, Burrell suggested. Think about it. As evening approached, the neighbors finally dispersed. Miller's men came with a wagon to transport him home, but not before he pressed a bank draft into Sarah's hands. First investment, he said, for whatever you need to start. Alone again, the three of them four. If you counted the memory of John that seemed to bless rather than haunt, sat down to a simple supper of beans and cornbread. Nathan chattered excitedly about Emily's visit, about the horses they'd breed, about the cave that had saved their cattle. We should name it, he said. The Cave. Something to remember this by. Sanctuary Cave, Sarah suggested. Storm's End, Cole offered. Nathan considered. New Beginning Cave. They debated good-naturedly as they cleaned dishes. Then Sarah opened the old wooden cabinet by the door, John's cabinet, where he'd kept his important papers. She pulled out a leather portfolio, thick with documents. These are John's breeding plans, she said, laying them on the table. Bloodlines, breeding schedules, projected offspring characteristics. He researched for years. Cole studied the meticulous notes, impressed by the thoroughness. He knew what he was doing. He always said the land would provide if we were patient. Sarah traced John's handwriting with one finger. I think he would have liked you. Cole, you're alike in many ways, different in others. But the important part's the integrity, the quietness. The way you teach Nathan, he would have approved. Sarah, I need to say this, she interrupted. I love John completely. Part of me always will. But that part can exist alongside new feelings, new possibilities. The heart's not a cup that empties and fills. It's more like... She paused, searching for words. Like this land. It can hold multiple seasons at once, winter's memory, spring's promise, summer's hope. Nathan had fallen asleep at the table, head pillowed on his arms. Cole carried him to bed, tucking the quilts around him. The boy stirred slightly. Pa, he murmured, is Emily really coming? She really is? Good. A man needs family complete. The boy's eyes closed again. Ma's been different since you came, lighter, like she remembers how to laugh. When Cole returned downstairs, he found Sarah standing by the window, looking out at the moonlight on snow. She'd let her hair down, and it caught the lamp's glow like spun copper. "I aired out John's Sunday suit today," she said without turning. "It should fit you for the harvest dance. If you're staying, that is. If this is really your choice and not just circumstances forcing your hand." Cole moved to stand beside her, their reflections overlapping in the dark glass. 3 months ago, I was a man running from ghosts. Now I'm a man with a future, a son who calls me Pa, a daughter willing to forgive, a woman brave enough to offer her heart again, and a chance to build something lasting. Is that enough? It's everything. Sarah turned to face him fully. "Then welcome home, Cole Drifter. Welcome to your permanent address." Outside, icicles continued their steady drip, each drop carving tiny channels in the snow, creating paths for the spring that would surely come. The thaw had begun not just of winter's grip, but of frozen hearts learning to beat again, of a family growing from the ashes of loss, of a community strengthened by shared survival. In the barn, Pearl whinnied softly, perhaps dreaming of the foals she'd bear come spring. The cattle settled in their cave shelter, and in the house, 3 people who'd started as strangers sat together, planning a future that John Weaver would have blessed, building something new on foundations he'd laid, proving that some dreams don't die, they just wait for the right hands to complete them. The morning of the harvest dance dawned crisp and golden, October painting the valley in shades of amber and rust. Sarah stood before her wardrobe, hands trembling slightly as she pulled out the cedar chest from beneath her bed. She hadn't opened it in 3 years. "Ma," Nathan appeared in the doorway, already dressed in his Sunday clothes trousers only slightly too short, shirt pressed with hot irons the night before. "You all right, or just thinking?" She lifted the chest's lid, releasing the scent of cedar and memories. There, wrapped in tissue paper, lay her mother's dress blue as a summer sky, with tiny pearl buttons down the bodice and lace at the collar that her grandmother had tatted. "You're going to wear it," Nathan said. Not a question, but a statement of hope. "I'm considering it. Pa Cole, he's down by the creek. Been there since sunrise." Sarah looked at her son, seeing John's eyes, but also something new, a confidence that had grown these past months. "Why aren't you with him?" He said he needed to think. About tonight. About dancing. Nathan fidgeted with his collar. "He's scared." "Ma." Cole's scared. Not of work or weather or even Thomas Miller, but of this, of being happy in front of people, of claiming something good. Nathan's wisdom, earned through loss, shone clear. "Same as you." Sarah sat on the bed, patting the space beside her. Nathan joined her, and she pulled him close. "When did you get so wise?" "Been watching you both circle each other like nervous horses. Someone needs to take the first step." "And you think I should?" "I think Pa would want you to. Both pass." Sarah kissed his forehead, then stood with decision. "Go tell Cole that dinner's at 5. We leave at 6. And if he's not ready, I'll hitch the wagon myself." Nathan grinned and bolted. Sarah turned back to the blue dress, lifting it to the light. Her mother had worn it to her own wedding, had danced in it at harvest celebrations when the world was younger and simpler. "Help me be brave," she whispered to the empty room, to John's memory, to her mother's spirit. "Help me choose joy again." Down at the creek, Cole sat on the same rock where Nathan had been fishing that first day. The letter from Emily was worn soft from reading, "Papa, I've been thinking about what you wrote about second chances. Grandmother says people who don't forgive become prisoners of their own making. I don't want to be a prisoner anymore. When I come this summer, I want to meet the family you've found." The boy Nathan sounds nice. "You didn't say much about his mother, but I can read between lines. Be happy. Papa, Mama would want that. Your loving daughter, Emily." "Mr. Cole, Nathan's voice carried across the water. Ma says 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, or she'll hitch the wagon herself. Cole smiled despite his nerves. Your mother doesn't make idle threats, does she? No, sir. And she's wearing her special dress. The blue one. Cole stood, brushing off his trousers. Then I'd better make myself presentable. At Doc Turner's house. Cole stood in the man's washroom, staring at his reflection. His face, clean-shaven for the first time in months, looked younger but also more vulnerable. Doc's borrowed white shirt fit well enough, and Grace had insisted on pressing his one good pair of trousers. You clean up well, Doc said from the doorway. Nervous? Terrified? Good. Means it matters. Doc adjusted his own collar, equally nervous. Grace and I are announcing our engagement tonight, officially. The whole town already knows. There's knowing and there's declaring. Big difference. Doc handed Cole a small flask. Courage. Just a sip. Cole declined. Need my wits clear tonight. For dancing or for talking? Both. Sarah deserves the truth about my past. All of it. She's a strong woman, stronger for having known loss. Doc straightened Cole's collar paternally. Don't underestimate her capacity for understanding. The barn at the Morrison Ranch had been transformed. Paper lanterns cast warm light across the swept floor. Autumn leaves garlands draped the rafters, and tables groaned under the weight of harvest food apple pies, roasted corn, cider warming in kettles, ginger cookies shaped like horses and stars. Cole helped Sarah down from the wagon, his breath catching at the sight of her in the blue dress, her hair pinned up with small white flowers woven through. She was beautiful, but more than that, she was radiant with determined joy. You look, he started, like a woman attending her first dance in 3 years, like a woman ready to live again. Nathan had already disappeared into a crowd of children, proudly telling anyone who'd listen about my folks and the horses they'd be breeding come spring. Sheriff Burrell stood on a makeshift platform, fiddle in hand. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Cedar Falls Harvest Dance. We've survived drought, sickness, and the worst blizzard in memory. Tonight, we celebrate. The music started fiddle and accordion, guitar and harmonica filling the barn with melodies older than memory. Couples took the floor immediately. Grace and Doc Turner led off, her yellow dress swirling, his face bright with pride. Sarah Weaver, Mrs. Mueller's voice boomed. Is that Elizabeth's dress? It is, Sarah said, chin lifted. Your mother would be so pleased. She always said that dress was meant for dancing. Thomas Miller approached, still using his cane but moving well. Beside him stood a woman Cole hadn't seen before, handsome rather than pretty, with silver streaking her dark hair. Mrs. Weaver, Mr. Cole, Miller said formally. May I present Mrs. Hannah Morrison. She owns this ranch. Hannah smiled warmly. Thomas has told me about your kindness during the storm, how you took him in, tended his injury. Anyone would have done the same, Sarah replied. No, Hannah said firmly. They wouldn't have. Thomas has asked to court me, and I've agreed. But only if you give your blessing. Sarah, I know there's been much difficulty between you. Sarah looked at Miller, who stood straighter under her scrutiny. The past is past. Everyone deserves happiness. Dance with me, Hannah, Miller asked, and they moved onto the floor, his limp barely noticeable. Cole and Sarah stood awkwardly, watching others dance. Around them, the community swirled ranchers and merchants, widows and spinsters, children weaving between adults' legs. I should check on Nathan, Sarah said. He's fine. Look. Cole pointed to where Nathan was teaching the Morrison boys how to whittle, John's old knife careful in his hands. Cole Drifter. Sheriff Burrell called from the platform. I hear you play a mean harmonica. Come give us a tune. Go on, Sarah urged. Show them what you played for us that night. Cole joined the musicians, pulling out the harmonica, John's harmonica, now polished bright. He started with Red River Valley, slow and sweet, and gradually the barn quieted, couples swaying rather than stepping. "Sweet Betsy from Pike," someone called out, and Cole obliged, the barn erupting in singing. Nathan's young voice rose clear and true, and Sarah found herself humming along. After 3 songs, Cole stepped down, and Sheriff Burrell announced, "Ladies' choice dance, ladies. Claim your partners." Sarah stood before Cole, extended her hand. "Dance with me." "Sarah, I should tell you. After? Dance first. Talk after." He took her hand, led her onto the floor as the fiddle began a waltz. Sarah moved into his arms as naturally as breathing, her hand light on his shoulder, his palm warm against her waist. "People are watching," she murmured. "Let them." They moved together, finding rhythm, finding grace. Other couples made room. Understanding this was more than just a dance. This was a declaration, a choice, a public claiming of possibility. "You're graceful," Sarah said, surprised. "My wife taught me, said a lawman who couldn't dance was only half civilized." "Tell me about her." Margaret. As they danced, Cole talked about meeting Margaret at a church social, her laugh that could fill a room, her stubborn insistence on staying in Kansas despite the danger, her dreams for Emily. "She would have liked you," he said, "would have admired your strength, your determination to keep the ranch. I would have liked her. Any woman who could tame Cole Drifter must have been remarkable. I wasn't always Drifter. I was Cole Garrison then, Deputy Marshal Cole Garrison." Sarah's step didn't falter. "And now I'm just Cole, Nathan's paw. You're—" He paused. "My what? Whatever you'll let me be." The song ended, but they stood still, hands still clasped. Around them, people applauded not for the music, but for them. For the sight of Sarah Weaver choosing joy, choosing future over past. "Sarah," Grace called out. "Catch." Sarah turned just in time to catch a small bouquet of autumn flowers, Grace's bouquet. The crowd laughed and cheered. "That's not fair," Mrs. Patterson protested. "She's not even officially engaged." "Yet!" Nathan's voice piped up, causing more laughter and Sarah's face to flame. Cole led her outside, away from the noise and attention. The night air was cool. Stars scattered like spilled sugar across the sky. They walked to the fence line, where horses stood watching the festivities. "I need to tell you everything," Cole said, "before this goes further." "Then tell me." He told her about the men who'd killed Margaret, 3 brothers named McKenna, who'd run illegal whiskey and didn't appreciate a lawman's interference. How he'd hunted them systematically, legally but relentlessly. The trial, the hangings, the hollow victory that solved nothing. "I became someone I didn't recognize," Jody said. "Emily saw it. That's why she couldn't forgive me. I chose vengeance over her." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, then said, "You chose justice. There's a difference." "Is there? When the cost was my daughter. The cost was time and distance. But she's coming back. Cole. She's choosing to return." Sarah turned to face him fully. "We've all done things from grief we might not do again. I nearly sold the ranch to Miller out of spite, just to prove I didn't need anyone's help." "Would have, if you hadn't arrived." "That's different." "No, it's not. We both nearly let grief destroy what mattered most, but we didn't. We're here, choosing differently." From the barn, music spilled out again, a reel this time, fast and joyous. They could see Nathan through the windows, dancing with the schoolteacher's daughter, both of them laughing. "He's happy," Sarah said softly. "Happier than I've seen him since John died." "You've given him that. We've given him that. Together." She stepped closer. "Cole, I'm not asking for promises you can't make or declarations you're not ready for. But I am asking, will you stay? Not just for the winter or until spring, but stay. Build something with us. Cole removed his hat, ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Sarah had learned meant he was struggling for words. The first time I saw you, he said finally, you were standing at that fence line, counting dying cattle, refusing to break. You were the strongest thing I'd ever seen these months, watching you work yourself raw for this ranch, raising Nathan with such grace, opening your heart despite the risk, Sarah. I'm not good with words, but yes, I'll stay. For as long as you'll have me. And if that's forever, then I'm the luckiest man in the territory. Sarah reached up, touched his face gently. John would want this. He'd want Nathan to have a father, the ranch to thrive, me to be happy. He wasn't a jealous man, Cole. He was generous with his love. I'm not trying to replace him. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to be yourself. To be the man who saved our cattle, who taught Nathan to read the sky, who plays harmonica by the fire and brings music back to our home. From the barn. Sheriff Burrell's voice carried, "Final dance of the evening. Folks, make it count." Sarah took Cole's hand. "One more dance inside, where everyone can see." They returned to the barn as the fiddle began, Amazing Grace, slow and sweet. The floor filled with couples young and old, new love and established, widows and widowers finding second chances. Nathan appeared at their side. "Can I cut in, want to dance with my ma?" Cole stepped back, watched Sarah dance with her son, their faces bright with love and laughter. Around them, the community that had weathered storm and drought together now celebrated survival and hope. Grace appeared at Cole's elbow. "She loves you, you know. I know. And you love her." "I do." "Then stop standing here and go claim your family." The song was ending. Cole walked onto the floor, placed one hand on Nathan's shoulder, took Sarah's hand with the other. They stood together, three people who'd found each other across miles and years and grief. "Take us home, Pa," Nathan said simply. As they walked to their wagon, neighbors called out goodbyes and good wishes. Thomas Miller tipped his hat. Hannah Morrison pressed a jar of preserves into Sarah's hands. Doc Turner and Grace waved from where they stood with the minister, probably planning their spring wedding. The ride home was quiet, Nathan asleep between them before they'd gone a mile, his head on Sarah's shoulder, his hand in Cole's. The harvest moon lit their way, turning the road silver. "I have something for you," Sarah said, pulling a paper from her pocket. "I've been waiting for the right moment." Cole took it, squinting in the moonlight. It was a legal document, the deed to the ranch, with a freshly added line, "Cole Garrison Drifter, equal partner and heir." "Sarah, I can't. You can and you will. This ranch needs you. We need you. And when Emily comes, I want her to know her father has a real home, a permanent place." Cole folded the deed carefully, tucked it inside his shirt, next to Emily's letter. "Thank you. No. Thank you. For choosing us. For choosing to stay." The ranch appeared before them, windows dark but welcoming. Their ranch now. Their home. As Cole lifted sleeping Nathan from the wagon, as Sarah lit the lamps, as they moved through the familiar routines of evening, everything felt different, settled, permanent, complete. The purple sage bloomed wild across the valley, painting the landscape in swaths of violet that caught the morning light like nature's own cathedral windows. Cole stood at the barn door, watching the new foal take its first wobbling steps beside Pearl. The colt had his mother's gray coloring, but the Arabian refinement in his head and legs the first success of their breeding program. "He's perfect," Sarah said, appearing beside him with 2 cups of coffee. She moved differently now, careful with her balance, one hand unconsciously resting on the gentle swell beneath her apron. "John's dream, made real," Cole replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Our dream now." She leaned against him, a gesture that had become natural over the winter months since their marriage. "Nathan's already decided to call him Storm Dancer." "Good name. Fitting, considering he was conceived during the blizzard." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the foal explore on spindly legs. A year had passed since Cole first rode into their lives, and the ranch had transformed. New fencing stretched across the pastures, the barn had been expanded, and Thomas Miller's investment had purchased 2 more breeding mares from a ranch in Texas. "Stagecoach today," Sarah said quietly. "I know." Nervous, terrified. Cole's hand found hers. What if she's changed her mind? What if seeing me here, seeing us? She hasn't changed her mind. Her last letter was clear. Sarah squeezed his fingers. She wants to know her father again. Trust that. Nathan burst from the house, his growth over the winter evident in the way his pants stopped well above his ankles. "Ma Pa, I've got everything ready. Emily's room has fresh flowers, and I polished Pa's good boots. And—" "Slow down, son," Cole laughed. "The stage isn't due until noon. But we need to leave early to get good spots, and I made her a welcome present look." Nathan produced a small carved horse, painted gray like pearl. "So she knows about our horses right away." Sarah touched the carving gently. "It's beautiful. Nathan, you've gotten so skilled. Pa's been teaching me, just like my first Pa taught him." The boy said it simply, without conflict, having found room in his heart for both fathers. The morning passed in a blur of preparations. Sarah had been cooking for 2 days fried chicken, apple pie, fresh bread, all the foods Cole had mentioned Emily loved as a child. The house sparkled, Sunday china laid out on the good tablecloth Sarah's mother had embroidered. As they prepared to leave for town, Cole noticed something new on the mantel, his old letter to Emily, the one he'd carried creased and worn, now pressed flat and framed beside a photograph of John and Sarah's wedding. "When did you—" "Last week," Sarah said. "It belongs there, part of our story, part of what brought us together." The ride to town felt both eternal and too quick. Cole's hands were steady on the reins, the trembling that had marked his arrival long gone, but his heart raced like a young man's. Cedar Falls was busy with spring commerce. Farmers examining seed catalogs at Henderson's store, ranchers negotiating cattle prices, children playing in the dusty street. Several people called out greetings. Cole was fully part of the community now, especially after accepting the part-time deputy position. "There," Nathan pointed to the dust cloud approaching from the east. "The stage." They waited at the depot, Sarah's hand on Cole's arm, Nathan practically vibrating with excitement. The stage rolled to a stop, dust settling in a golden cloud. The door opened, and passengers began to disembark a traveling salesman. 2 miners, an elderly woman, then Emily. She was taller than Cole's memory, 15 now, with her mother's delicate features but his steady gaze. She wore a traveling dress of deep green, her hair pinned up like a young lady's. For a moment, father and daughter simply looked at each other across the years of separation. "Papa?" Her voice was uncertain, younger than her appearance. "Emily." Cole took 1 step forward, then stopped, unsure. She closed the distance, not throwing herself into his arms as he'd dreamed, but taking his hands in hers, studying his face. "You look different. Happier." "I am happier." "Emily, this is Sarah, my wife, and Nathan." Sarah stepped forward warmly. "We're so glad you've come. Emily, your father's talked of nothing else for weeks." Emily's composure cracked slightly, a real smile breaking through. "He mentioned you in his letters. Both of you." She turned to Nathan. "You're the one teaching him about fishing." Nathan grinned. "Someone has to. He was terrible at it when he arrived." The tension eased, and Emily laughed Margaret's laugh, bright and genuine. Then she turned back to the coach. I have someone for you to meet." She helped a small boy down from the coach, perhaps 4 years old, with dark hair and Emily's eyes. He clutched Emily's hand tightly, clearly overwhelmed. "Papa," Emily said carefully, "this is William, my son." The world seemed to stop. Sarah's intake of breath was audible. Nathan's eyes went wide. Cole stood frozen. "I know I should have written," Emily rushed on. But I was afraid you wouldn't let me come if you knew. His father, we were married. Briefly. He died of influenza last winter. Grandmother said I was too young to raise a child alone. Wanted to send William to an orphanage. But I couldn't. I couldn't lose anyone else. Cole knelt slowly, bringing himself to the boy's level. William pressed closer to his mother, suspicious. "Hello, William," Cole said gently. "I'm your grandfather." The boy studied him solemnly. "Mama said you catch bad men." "Sometimes, but mostly now I raise horses. Would you like to see horses?" William nodded shyly. Cole stood, met Emily's anxious gaze. "You're both welcome, for however long you want to stay." Emily's eyes filled with tears. She quickly blinked away. "Grandmother said you'd reject us. Said you couldn't forgive what you'd see as shame." "Your grandmother doesn't know who I've become." Cole looked at Sarah, who nodded encouragement. "We've all learned that families come together in unexpected ways, haven't we? Nathan?" "Yes, sir." Nathan stepped forward eagerly. "William, I can teach you fishing and riding, and there's a new foal born just this week." The boy peered out from behind Emily's skirts, interested despite his fear. "A baby horse, the prettiest gray colt you ever saw. Storm Dancer, we call him." As they loaded Emily's trunks onto the wagon, the conversation began to flow more naturally. Emily asked about the ranch, the horses, the town. William slowly warmed to Nathan's enthusiasm. Sarah quietly took charge, making everyone comfortable with her natural grace. The ride home was filled with Nathan's chatter, pointing out landmarks, telling stories of the blizzard, the cattle sickness, how Cole had saved everything. Emily listened intently, occasionally glancing at her father as if seeing him anew through Nathan's hero worship. When they crested the rise and the ranch spread before them, Emily gasped. "It's beautiful. The pictures you sent didn't do it justice." "Wait until you see the sunset," Sarah said. "The way the light catches the sage, it's like the whole world turns purple and gold." At the house, Cole carried Emily's trunk to the small room they'd prepared. William clung to his mother until Nathan produced the carved horse. "This is for you," Nathan said solemnly. "I made it special." William took it reverently, tiny fingers exploring the carved details. "For me, for you, we're family now." The simple declaration broke something in Emily. She sat heavily on the porch steps, finally allowing tears to fall. "I was so afraid," she whispered. "So afraid you wouldn't want us." Sarah sat beside her, not touching but present. Family isn't about blood or perfection. It's about choosing each other, again and again, despite the mistakes and miles. Through the window, Cole watched his daughter compose herself, watched Sarah's quiet comfort, watched Nathan showing William how to hold carrots flat-palmed for the horses. The cradle he'd been carving in secret sat in the barn, almost finished, waiting for Sarah to announce what everyone suspected, but hadn't spoken aloud. Dinner that evening was somewhat formal at first, everyone navigating the new dynamics, but William's wonder at the indoor pump, Nathan's enthusiasm about the horses, and Sarah's gentle management gradually eased the tension. "Tell me about my mother," Emily said suddenly. "Your letters mentioned her, but tell me something I don't know." Cole thought carefully. She loved thunderstorms, would stand on the porch watching lightning, said it was God's way of reminding us how small we are. "You were the same as a baby, never cried during storms, just watched with big eyes." "I still love them," Emily admitted. "Grandmother hates that about me." "Your grandmother never understood prairie women," Sarah said. "We're made of sterner stuff." After dinner, they gathered on the porch. Cole had retrieved John's harmonica, his harmonica now, and played soft melodies while the sun set. William had fallen asleep in Emily's lap, the carved horse clutched in his small fist. "You were right," Emily said to Sarah. "The sunset is magical. Nathan was teaching Emily the words to Sweet Betsy from Pike when Thomas Miller and Hannah rode up, dressed in their finest. "Sorry to intrude," Thomas said, "but we wanted to share our news. We were married this afternoon." Congratulations erupted, and Hannah blushed prettily. It was a simple ceremony, just what we wanted. "You'll come to the party next week, though," Thomas added. "The whole county's invited." He looked at Emily. "You must be Cole's daughter. You have his eyes." "Emily, and this is William," she replied, adjusting the sleeping boy. "Ah, family expanding all around," Hannah said with a meaningful look at Sarah's middle. Sarah colored slightly but smiled. "It seems to be the season for it." After the Millers left, quiet settled over the ranch. Nathan had taken William inside to the trundle bed in his room. Emily and Cole sat alone on the porch for the first time. "I'm sorry, Papa," Emily said quietly. "For the years of anger, for the silence. You had every right." "No, I didn't. I was a child who lost both parents, one to death, one to grief. I couldn't understand then that hunting those men was your way of grieving too. It was the wrong way." "Was it? They killed her? They would have killed others." Emily touched his hand. "I've learned something raising William alone this past year. Sometimes we do what we must, not what we'd choose." "What happened to his father?" "Samuel was a good man. Too young, maybe, but kind. We married quickly. Grandmother was furious. He worked at the bank, caught influenza from a customer." Emily's voice was steady, grief processed into acceptance. "He got to hold William twice before he died." "I'm sorry, sweetheart." "Don't be. He gave me William, gave me purpose. And his death taught me something. Holding on to anger at the living is foolish when death comes so easily." She looked at him directly. "I want William to know his grandfather, his real grandfather, not the ghost I've been carrying." From inside came the sound of Nathan reading to William something about horses. Of course. Sarah appeared in the doorway, backlit by lamplight. "Coffee, or I have warm milk for William when he wakes." "You think of everything," Emily said admiringly. "Papa wrote that you saved the ranch after your husband died." "We saved each other," Sarah corrected. "Your father, Nathan, and I. That's how families work." Later, after everyone had retired, Cole found Sarah in their room, brushing her hair by lamplight. The sight still caught him sometimes, the domesticity of it, the peace. "She's lovely," Sarah said. "Strong like you. She has Margaret's grace. And a son. You're a grandfather." Sarah turned, smiling. "How does it feel? Like another chance I don't deserve?" Sarah rose, crossed to him. "Stop that. Stop thinking in terms of deserving. Love isn't earned or deserved, it simply is." "The baby," Cole began, touching her middle gently. "Due in autumn? I wanted to wait to be sure. But yes." She covered his hand with hers. "A child who will know only love, no loss. Who will have Nathan as a brother, Emily as a sister, William as a playmate. And parents who chose each other, chose happiness. Yes." They stood together at the window, looking out at their land bathed in moonlight. The barn with its growing herd, the pastures Miller's investment had helped improve, the garden already showing green shoots. "Papa?" Emily's voice came from the hallway. "William's asking for you. He wants to know if grandfathers tell bedtime stories." Cole looked at Sarah, who smiled and pushed him gently toward the door. "Go. Be the grandfather you couldn't be before." In Nathan's room, William sat up in the trundle bed, the carved horse still in his hand. Nathan had given up his own bed to Emily, preparing to sleep on the floor, but Emily patted the mattress beside her. "Room for everyone," she said. Cole sat on the small stool by the bed, looking at the faces turned toward him, his daughter, his grandson, his son of the heart. "What kind of story would you like, Cole?" Horses, William said immediately. A story with horses and maybe cowboys and definitely a happy ending, Emily added, smiling. Cole began to speak, weaving a tale of wild horses and brave children, of storms weathered and families found. Sarah appeared in the doorway, listening, her hand resting on the promise of new life within her. As Cole's voice wove the story, he thought of the journey that had brought them all here. The letter in his vest pocket that first day, worn from reading and regret. Emily's cold responses that had gradually warmed. Sarah's courage in opening her heart. Nathan's innocent trust. And now William. Another generation. Another chance. The purple sage would bloom every spring, its fragrance carrying on the wind like a blessing. The horses would multiply, John's dream fully realized. The ranch would prosper, the family would grow, and the empty chair at the table would finally be not an absence, but an abundance filled with different loves at different times, all of them real, all of them worthy. And they lived happily ever after, William asked sleepily as the story wound down. Cole looked at his family, chosen in blood, planned in surprise, and knew the only answer that mattered. They lived, he said simply, fully and gratefully, for all their days. Through the window, the stars shone constant over the valley where sage bloomed eternal, where broken hearts had learned to beat again, where every ending had become a beginning, and where Cole Drifter's trembling hands were finally, permanently, still. Friend. I've told you this story because sometimes we need reminding that families aren't just born, they're built from broken pieces and brave choices. Cole arrived with trembling hands and a heart full of ghosts. Sarah stood guarding her grief like a fortress, and Nathan watched it all with the hollow eyes of a boy who'd seen his father die too young. But here's what I learned watching them: gratitude isn't about being thankful for what comes easy. It's about recognizing grace in the stranger who helps with dying cattle, in the neighbor who offers his barn during a blizzard, in the child who calls you Pa when you've done nothing to earn it except stay. Real family includes the daughter who returns after years of silence, bringing her own losses and little boy who needs a grandfather. It includes the first husband whose dreams you continue, and the rival who becomes your business partner. It's the teacher who brings preserves and the sheriff who plays fiddle at harvest dances. We're all walking around with our letter in our vest pocket, that thing we can't let go of, can't move past. But maybe, just maybe, someone's waiting at a fence line, counting their own losses, ready to help us transform that old grief into something golden. That's all. That's everything.